Who was Vladimir Lenin and why is he important? That is what we will be discussing in this lesson. Vladimir Lenin was a communist revolutionary who helped orchestrate the Russian Revolution and emerged as the first premier of the Soviet Union. Lenin played a senior role in a number of revolutions leading up to the overthrow of Russia's Tsar Nicholas II in 1917. He formed the world's first communist state, the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, in 1917, which, a few years later, would be the basis for the greater Soviet Union. He was also instrumental in getting Russia out of World War I. Don't worry, we'll talk about some of this in more detail later on. Lenin was heavily influenced by another figure, Karl Marx. Marx was a German philosopher who set the theoretical foundation for modern communism. He also had a pretty epic beard. He was essentially the father of communism. Marx, along with another intellectual named Friedrich Engels, authored the Communist Manifesto in 1848. Marx is widely regarded as one of the most influential thinkers in modern history. His ideas affected a host of disciplines, including philosophy, history, politics, and economics. But this lesson is more about Lenin than it is about Marx. So, where does Lenin come in? Well, Lenin basically took the theories of Marx and implemented them in a practical form. Because of this, Marx and Lenin are considered the founding fathers of the communist system. In fact, the political theory behind communism is often called Marxism-Leninism. Tsar Nicholas II came to power in Russia in 1894. He proved to be unpopular with the Russian people. Many saw him as haughty and aloof. By the early 1900s, discontentment with the monarchy swelled to the point of revolution. During the Revolution of 1905, the Tsar's Imperial Guard opened fire on a crowd of protesters, killing hundreds, possibly thousands. This event, known as Bloody Sunday, further fanned the flames of radical revolution. In the early 1900s, Lenin emerged as the leader of a radical political group called the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks were composed primarily of working-class citizens and were committed to Lenin's brand of communist ideology. Bolsheviks differed from their more moderate counterpart, the Mensheviks. Lenin's radicalism got him in trouble with the monarchy. At various times throughout the early 1900s, he was imprisoned, exiled to Siberia, and forced to live abroad. When World War I broke out, Lenin hoped to transform the war into a worldwide war against capitalism. Of course, the war didn't quite take the turn he had hoped. With World War I still going on, revolution broke out in 1917. The February Revolution, as it has been called, resulted in the overthrow of Tsar Nicholas II and the installation of a new leftist provisional government. The new provisional government was divided between various factions, including Lenin's Bolsheviks and the moderate Mensheviks. During the October Revolution of 1917, of course, the Bolsheviks overthrew the provisional government and formed a communist government. Lenin served as the premier of the Soviet Union until his death in 1924. He was succeeded by Joseph Stalin. Vladimir Lenin has been a tremendously influential figure in modern history. Even into the 1980s, Lenin's image remained a prominent symbol of the Soviet Union. Prior to the fall of communism in the late 1980s and early 1990s, there were statues of him everywhere. He appeared on flags and banners. Think of it this way. Lenin was to the Russian people what George Washington is to Americans. If you understand that, you understand just how important Lenin was. He, along with Karl Marx, was a primary architect of the communist system.
Vladimir Lenin was a leading political figure and revolutionary thinker of the 20th century. Vladimir Lenin was born in Simbirsk in Russia into an educated family. He was an excellent student at school and went on to study law at university. His radical political attitude was heavily influenced by the fact that his brother was hanged for attempting to assassinate the Tsar, Alexander III. Lenin was eventually expelled by the university for his extreme views, and he had to complete his studies as an external student. He became a revolutionary after he completed his degree and was arrested and exiled to Siberia, where he met and married his wife. He took the pseudonym Lenin in 1902 and spent many years in Munich, London and Geneva, and became the leader of the Bolshevik movement. In 1917, towards the end of World War I, Lenin returned to Russia, aided by the Germans, in order to try to overthrow the provisional government that was ruling Russia, and eventually led the October Revolution, which led to the Bolsheviks' victory and assumed complete control of the country. He ruthlessly destroyed any opposition to his rule in an action known as the Red Terror, and introduced communist rule across the country. Lenin survived 2 assassination attempts, but the second attempt led to a decline in his health, and in 1923 he suffered a stroke which left him bedridden and mute until his death. Lenin's policies industrialized Russia and eliminated unemployment, but his regime was brutal in its suppression of the people. He remains one of the most important political figures of the 20th century.